Kevin's not on yet, so we can call. Oh, we have to roll call anyway. I will call the regular town council meeting April 12th, 2023 to order and ask for a roll call, please.
Sure. Councillor Granby. Kroger here. Lakin here. Schuyler
Here.
Thomas,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Meyer,
Here.
and Mayor Clark.
Here. All right, that takes us to additions or deletions to the agenda. Are there any?
Nothing from staff, no, sir.
Nothing from staff? Is the item number 6 still on the agenda? I thought maybe he was going to pull that. Mr. Park.
As far as I know, that's still on.
Okay.
It's number 7.
I think it's number 6.
It's got updated.
You must have been. It was updated a few days ago.
Yeah, we sent an email out with an updated agenda.
Hold it out of Dropbox.
It was buried at the bottom of the Dropbox.
It's the updated.
The updated one was at the bottom of the files.
The packet.
Yeah, it says updated. It's when you opened. Yeah. All right, whatever. Come on. All right, keep going. All right, adoption of the consent calendar. This is grouping of items that don't necessarily need individual attention. Is there anything that anybody on there wants to pull off, or is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second. All right, motion made by Beth, seconded by Russ. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Next up is public comments. Establish time for the public to address the council on any item that's not otherwise on the agenda. Anybody have anything? Like not, anybody on Zoom? Doesn't look like it. Okay, moving right along. We've got a big agenda tonight, so it's good to keep moving. Item number 5 under public requests and presentations. We have an update from Art Space regarding Ridgway space to create. Andrew Michelson, I believe, is on Zoom. And take it away, Andrew. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm really happy to be able to join you. I really wish that I had the opportunity to be there in person, but you know, going to make do and join by Zoom because I didn't want to go too much longer without having an opportunity to come for council. And frankly, just thank you all for all the support that the town and the council has provided for the Ridgway Space to Create project, which I think most of you all know is successfully completed. We're now fully leased. We have folks who've been living there since the day we opened the doors in October. We are very much in a good position, stabilizing the project in operations, and look forward to converting to our permanent financing yet this month. So things are going very well. And, you know, like I said, just wanted to come for the council, share that update, make sure folks had, you know, that information in front of you. And then also to share just some fun news that we also have our grand opening scheduled, which will be on June 22nd. There's some planning underway for that, but the date has been secured, and I think that's going to be 4 to 7 in the evening. And we're working with the town and constituents, as well as our team from Art Space and elsewhere in Colorado to get that planned and have some festivities and some fun stuff. We'll hope that as many folks can come and join us at the building. We expect to have residents displaying work and others performing and all of that good stuff. So all good news all around. And otherwise, just the kind of fun little tidbit is that of the residents who did move in, and a reminder, there's 30 units, a mix of 1 and 2 bedroom units. We did not have a creative or an artist preference as part of that leasing process, but I know from our asset folks that at least half of the folks who are living in the building have identified as being creatives or artists in some form or another. So even without having that preference, we were able to ensure that we did in fact address that creative component in addition to the workforce housing that we set out to. So I'm frankly pretty proud that we were able to achieve that, and hopefully others share that sentiment. So I'll keep it brief. That's really what I wanted to share, but of course, I'm happy to field questions or take comments from the council or from anyone else who's attending as well, before I'm able to see you all again in June.
Great, thanks, Andrew. Appreciate you being here, even if it is not in person. Anybody on council have any questions for Andrew?
Nope, congratulations, sounds great.
Yeah, it's exciting, and I too have been just by talking to people and kind of getting the pulse of the place. I've been pleasantly surprised to learn just how many creatives there are in the building. I think it's just indicative of how many creatives there are in the town of Ridgway. I mean, again, backs up why we've been a creative district all these years, and it's just really rewarding. Yeah, I don't know if you've heard anything about the outdoor lighting, I know that we had some supply chain issues there. It was going to be a while before we could get the new fixtures. Have you heard anything about that, Andy?
Yeah, I haven't heard recently, but that's a good reminder to follow up. I know that when we talked about that some months ago, that the fixtures were some months out. So I'll reach out again to the Stryker folks and see if I can't get an update on that. I'm happy to let you know when I hear from them.
Great. And then I may reach out to you offline. I've got some fussy little things that the Fuse group has come up with in there using the new community space, which by the way, we're extremely excited about. We got tables, we got chairs on hand. They've already been ordered and delivered. We got fancy tables, nice aluminum metal table, round ones and rectangles on the way. I'm hopeful that they'll be here by the grand opening. I know that there's some delays in there like everything else, but yeah, there's a couple other things I'd like to talk to you offline about. No need to bring it up. Again, thanks.
Absolutely. I would welcome that. And I'm glad to hear that folks are using that space. We've been working closely, obviously, with Preston, a variety of things move forward, and also with Tara, who's kind of taking that point. So always feel free to reach out. Again, I wish I could be there in person. Love to visit that community and the project. You guys hold a special place in my heart, and it's always sad to kind of see the project move on and go on to the next one. But I do plan to keep visiting Ridgway. So I'll look forward to seeing you the next time. Thank you all for the time.
Well, we'll look forward to having you in June for sure. Anybody, we don't have a big crowd here, and I don't see the Zoom attendant list. Is there anybody online or in the room that has any questions for Andrew about any of this?
A quick update on the potential for the microgrid, the community space.
Yeah,
We did not put in for a planning grant because we're pretty far along with the planning. But at some point, Andrew, we're gonna need to gain access to the roof and do an assessment and come up with a final budget for that. And then there's a construction grant that will open up. They said spring, but my guess is fall. We'll apply for that, and that'll cover probably more than 50% of the cost of the system. So
Oh, that's wonderful.
so looking forward to that. That's going to include putting a small solar array on the roof, as well as probably a Tesla power wall located either in community space because it's attractive, or possibly just in the utility room, depending on what makes the most logistic sense.
great.
Great.
Good news.
I can't tell from the Zoom very easily, but I'm assuming that was Terry.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's terrible.
No, I'm glad to hear that, Terry. And whenever you do need to access that roof, just reach out to myself or to Greg Foley from our team, and we can coordinate with the on-site property management to ensure you get up on top where you need to. It's exciting though. I'm glad to hear it.
Okay, unless there's anything else on this item, we'll let you go, Andrew. Thanks again for giving us a report, checking in, and again, just can't wait to see you in June.
All right, sounds great. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Andrew.
All right, that takes us to policy matters, of which we have a bunch. Item number 6 is a request from Vista Park Development LLC to waive the requirement to pay for all water and sewer tap fees prior to recording a final plat. Joe Nelson is on this one on the agenda. Seeing him on Zoom or in person, so maybe why don't we just table this one for now.
Yeah, so I think you might be looking at you may have forgotten to upload the the standalone agenda to Dropbox for the packet has been updated. So if you're going off the packet, item number 6 is the proclamation for Dark Sky Week.
Okay, I thought I had that, so maybe I'm looking at, we're having agenda.
Just numbers.
All right, so we, first item number 6 is proclamation about International Dark Sky Week. And for anyone who doesn't know, Ridgway is a formally recognized dark sky community under the auspices of the International Dark Sky Association, which I understand they're in the midst of a renaming, rebranding, where they're going to be Dark Skies International. Why, I don't know, but considering it's not that much different. But they've already proclaimed the week of the 15th and the 22nd as International Dark Sky Week, and they are indeed a very international organization recognizing the importance of dark skies and individual places and parks and various locations as being officially dark sky sites. And like I say, Ridgway's been one for a while. I think we were probably like the 3rd or 4th in the state. And then since then, Top of the Pines here in Erie County has been named as the Dark Sky Park. And so I just thought it'd be a great idea for us to go ahead and piggyback on the Dark Sky International effort and do a proclamation declaring April 15, 2020, 15 through the 22nd, 2023 is International Dark Sky Week. We've all got the proclamation in the packet. Somebody have any questions?
I do have a quick question about the Ridgway Town or Ridgway State Park. I know that they were considering joining that, and I was wondering if you had any information on that.
I think they are in process.
Awesome.
I'm pretty sure they're in process.
As well as Euclid, Natarita, and Norwood, we're all certified.
Sweet.
It's
Can
definitely.
we Telluride on it, because they were collected over the mountain in the winter time.
Could we work with Rob Gallo a little bit? Yeah.
Great. Anybody in the audience, either on Zoom or here in the room, have any questions about this item? Comments? If not, someone want to make a motion?
I motion to proclaim the week of April 15th through April 22nd, 2023 as International Dark Sky Week.
Second. All right, motion made by Polly, seconded by Russ. We'll call vote, or we'll do a just voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, so now that takes us to this park development request, which I am going to table since there's nobody here for that item. And we'll come back to that if Joe shows up or if anybody does. So that takes us to number 8, which is review and action on a request from Alpine Homes Ridgway LLC regarding infrastructure works related to the Riverfront Village project. And Jake Cantor is here with some other folks to talk about that. Yes, welcome, Jake.
Thank you. So today I brought some little handouts to give to you guys so you can kind of get a little overview of what I'm talking about here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, well, so thank you guys so much for taking the time to listen and consider our request today. If you don't remember from last time, my name is Jake Cantor and I'm the owner's rep for the Riverfront Village project. I'm going to start by saying that I'm grateful for you guys and also the town staff's willingness to work with us to make this process, completing this project logical and efficient. As you know, complications and inefficiencies cost money, which adds to the project's overall cost, which we're obviously trying to keep down. So today I'm asking for a few more items from Exhibit B of the development agreement to be considered for deferral to our SIA agreement in order to streamline the infrastructure process and make getting to our final plat and beyond more efficient. So please take a look at the sheet that I've handed out. It's basically a breakdown of the requirements listed in Exhibit B, the development agreement. The most major and expensive part of this infrastructure improvements are the water and sewer lines, which are completed and are now currently in the testing phase. We have also completed the sewer extension that will serve future developments as requested by the town in our pre-construction negotiations. Our electrical conduit will be in place prior to our final plat application, like we discussed last month, as well as the items required by numbers 1 through 5. Number 6, 10, and 11, as well as a small part of number 5, which is the transformers, have already been approved to defer until later in the project through the SIA agreement. So basically, in order to increase the efficiency of a project, we're making it and make the construction sequencing more logical. We're formally requesting that number 7, 8, and 9 can be deferred until project completion using the SIA agreement. So number 7 refers to the street signs, stop signs, and similar traffic control devices. For this item, we believe that these signs will get in the way and most likely will be damaged by construction traffic and construction activities. And they will most likely need to be repaired or replaced by the time the project nears completion. So by deferring the install of these signs, we'll save the project some money and time, which is what we're all looking for here. However, we will install a stop sign at the entryway at Highway 550. So any construction vehicles that are leaving the site will see that one before getting onto the highway. So that's number 7. I'm going to briefly skip number 8 and go right along to number 9, which is street lighting. We're also asking to defer this item until near project completion using the SIA agreement. For similar reasons to number 7, we believe that these will most likely get damaged during construction, need to be repaired or possibly rebuilt. Again, not needing to repair those will save us some time and money. We also believe that having the street lights installed and turned on during the duration of construction will be a nuisance to the neighbors due to the light shining at night when there's no work taking place on the site. So that's 7 and number 9. For number 8, which is the storm drainage system, I'm going to hand it off to Colt. He will be able to explain it a little better than I can.
Hi, everybody. My name is Colt Skidmore. I'll be taking over the superintendent role for the rest of the project. The storm drainage system, we don't have a typical underground storm drainage system with piping. Instead, what we have, it's relying on sheet drainage and surface draining from across the site into dry wells. Those of you what dry wells are is basically a big hole in the ground that's filled with rock that allows water to flow into these dry wells and then percolate down into the groundwater, where that is where it goes. For this really to work, the final grading needs to be done, and we need landscaping and all grass to be in place. Otherwise, this water is just going to flow straight into these piles of rock and just muck up, and I'll have to redo them again anyway. In the meantime, we do have a construction stormwater permit in compliance with CDPHE. We have measures in place so no storm water muck is leaving the site right now, and that continue through the entire course of the vertical construction. So ideally, we would install the dry wells at the same time we're doing landscape when we're all done with the vertical construction.
Thanks, Colt. So those are the 3 items that we're asking to defer using the SIA agreement. Finally, I have one more minor request that I'd like to make during this time. That request is that the town building department review our building permit plans prior to us having our final plat signed off and recorded. Just making this request in order to make the process more efficient so that when we do get our final plat, we don't have to wait a few more months for them to review our plans and then pick up the building permit. Ideally, we could get our final plat recorded and the next day head over, pick up our building permit and start work. So we're happy to pay any building permit fees the town has now, if that'll help in getting that process going. We had submitted our plans for the first phase, at least, to the building department back in November. We haven't heard anything back since then, really. So I was just kind of checking in on that and kind of portraying what we'd like to see happen in an ideal world. So thank you guys for listening. And if you have any questions, comments, concerns, we're all ears. Thank you.
Thanks, Jake. I'd like to start with getting staff's take on this request. I don't know, is Joanne on?
Yeah, Joanne is on. There's a memo in your packet laying out staff's perspective on the requests, and I think Joanne is on to kind of most likely reiterate or emphasize what you have in the staff report. To be candid on items 7 and 9. Yeah, streetlights, etc. Or street signs, stop signs, traffic control devices, and then streetlights. Those don't give staff much heartburn, again, to be candid. It's the storm drainage system that does. And so I think what you would probably hear from Joanne is that we would like to understand the alternatives for the storm drainage system if you don't want to opt to provide the dry wells now. So I'll let Joanne speak to that.
Okay. The dry wells are there to provide water quality treatment for the first flush of the storm. And I think the staff report mentions that they can propose an alternative to that, but we're concerned that not only that the water quality treatment isn't there right now, but that it also flows across somebody else's property on its way to the river. And I think we need to have, before we would ask council to waive that, we need a better understanding of the how they're going to provide water quality treatment. On 7 and 9, part of the reason this is required on a normal subdivision and staff doesn't have a lot of heartburn on this one is because this is all on private property. And so having the stop sign where it enters public right of way is enough until they need the signage, and the lights won't work until we have the transformers. So that seemed like that one seemed like it was pretty much should be tied to when they get the transformers. And then I'll let Preston explain the deal with building permits, because I don't know.
Well, why don't we first address the initial request before we get to the building permit questions, since that isn't part of the packet, at least not that I saw. And I had the same concern about having some sort of interim catchment system. If it's not going to be the full finished storm drainage system, I can see why that would be a hardship to do while you're doing the final infrastructure construction. There needs to be some sort of interim solution, it does seem.
Yeah, and I mentioned that we have a state permit for the course of construction. Like, just an idea of what that consists of now. We have a silt fence that surrounds our entire fence of the site. What that is, it stop any, even if we do have some runoff of water on the site, that silt fence is going to stop it from leaving the site. And also in that, there are a few inlets by like Mount Annie's. There's a drainage and everything. We have inlet protection around that. So anything that is on our site is not leaving our site. We have weekly inspections we do ourselves and correction in accordance to the state permit that we have. So it's not like right now we're relying on these dry wells because we don't have them right now. The same thing that's going on in vertical construction is going on right now. We won't allow that to leave the site.
So does that?
I guess the difference between what you have now and what would be required long-term is the ability to treat the first hour and a half of the first runoff. And, you know, I haven't seen the silt fence and I haven't seen the gravel, but typically both of those let the water out with some getting under. And I think the concern would be that we'd want something that's more like the long-term solution that you're providing than just what's required to meet the state minimums.
And I can understand the long-term solution is not just the dry wells. Like I mentioned, it requires grass to be in place. Allows the water to sheet across the grass. If it's just mud like we have now for current construction, it's just going to clog all that rock up until there's grass. And we obviously won't be having grass right now, so we're just going to dig it all up when we're filling the buildings.
So Joanne, that was gonna be my question. If they're containing everything and it's not leaving the property, is it necessary to treat the water, the quality of water?
If truly nothing is leaving the property, that probably, that's basically total retention. I haven't been there all winter and I don't know what stayed on site and what didn't. I had heard some concerns that there was water getting off site.
Can I ask conversely too, right now with all the water that's going to be coming downstream as well? I noticed the little ponds that are there on that side are pretty high as well. So are you also potentially going to have overflow from flooding that could then bring stuff back over the silt walls? Does that?
Yeah, that, of course, that is the potential. But the ponds that we've had on site now we had really deep trenches and we had to dewater the groundwater. So to hold that somewhere. And all those ponds did is just had somewhere to put it immediately until it went right back into the groundwater. If there's some more concern about what we can do more to make sure it doesn't like go further, we can do another layer of silt fence. That's another fix. We've done that on sites before. We can do, instead of silt fences, we can do straw wattles. We can do a couple different things that are, these temporary construction measures, but can add another, instead of just one silt fence, got another. And then if, so that fails you with that, and there's another one after that. That's certainly another option we could do. That would, in my eyes, make more sense than putting the dry walls in that are going to be filled with mud and the first rain, really.
And I guess your comment about the ponds too, we're pretty much almost done completely with the dewatering operations. So I know these guys are currently working on filling those ponds back in and getting the grade back up to what it was before. So the ponds will no longer be there in a few more weeks, probably.
Sure. And that's from, you just backfill that with graded waste from the site? Is that how you?
Yeah, we got an engineered design through the design team of what we needed to do with, there's special engineered fill as well as their native fill and some fabric in there it's solid now. So
I'm tempted to suggest that maybe we do a conditional approval of this and allow some time for Joanne to come down and meet with you guys and evaluate how it's worked this winter, because she says she hasn't been able to monitor it. And then between you and she and town staff in general could probably come up with a combination of either another silt fence or the straw wattles, and that would probably be adequate. People be comfortable with that?
Yeah.
I have a quick question on number 9, even though they had no heartburn about it. I assume the streetlights are dark sky compliant by code.
yes, they are.
But you mentioned the light. Is that going to be mitigated once the structures are in place? Is that the idea?
Yeah, that was my.
Yeah, it might have been full timing, right? Agenda item, but yeah, I believe when all the buildings are in place, it should kind of shield the light from making its way out.
So it's not a nuisance in quotes.
Correct.
Yeah, I think you're hearing and you now know how we are about our skies
Yeah,
as the project builds out.
yeah, I brought that up. There was a neighbor who had a minor complaint months ago when we accidentally forgot to turn off the lights. Forgot to turn off the lights in the office one night. So yeah, that's where that comment came from.
Thank you.
It's obvious now you're aware of the situation, and you can be prepared to hear more of those if the lighting isn't compliant.
Oh, yeah, of course.
So I suggest that we do this in 2 parts, that we address the 7, 8, and 9 kind of in the way that I suggested, and then take up the building permit question separately. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. And what I heard on 8 was direct staff to work with them to find the solution we're all looking for.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Essentially, yeah.
Conditional.
Yeah. Somebody want to make that motion? So I'll move to approve issues number 7 and 9 and number 8 with conditional approval, working with town staff.
To be deferred to an SIA.
Sure. Everything you need there? Yeah, so just to restate it, Russ is moving to approve the request for 7, 8, and 9 to be deferred to the SIA with the one exception, one condition of item number 8 being addressed by staff meeting with the developers team to make sure that whatever they are proposing as an interim stormwater system is adequate in that size. Okay. Second that, nice work. Second. All right. So that's restated the motion that Russ made and seconded by JT. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Now, Preston, what's your take on the building permit question?
The building permit application is in the queue. It's a rather large building permit application, and Mike, Neil, and our folks at CPS are making their way through it. I mean, we're several months away from a final plat application. I guess I want to verify, are you requesting that a building permit be issued before a final plat be executed and recorded?
Not necessarily.
You just want it tied?
We just want it to kind of go concurrently,
Yeah,
so that we don't.
Understood. I think that is totally realistic and achievable. Can I admit to it? No, but we feel comfortable with where we're at currently, that come time of execution of the plat and recording the very next day, we can be prepared to get you guys going with the building.
Perfect. No, thanks. I appreciate it. I just wanted to make sure there was no disconnect between that and the review didn't start until after we got our final plat and we had months of waiting. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
No, I'm hearing that staff's working on it, and while they can't promise that it'll be done the day you apply for your final plat, it'll be shortly after that, if it works. So it won't be months. We'll be able to get it for months.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. Anything else on this item?
That's all I had.
Okay.
So thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Right. Item number 9, presentation regarding updates to the town of Ridgway zoning and subdivision regs, i.e. chapter 7 updates. We've got Katie Kent and TJ Dublock from Community Planning Strategies to walk us through it. Hi, Katie.
Good evening. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Excellent. Thank you. Good to meet those of you on town council that I haven't met. I'm Katie Kent with CPS. And if you don't mind, I will hop right in and share my screen. And I'm going to start with some general information of where we've gotten so far. And then TJ is going to take over for the end of our presentation, and happy to answer questions along the way or when we're finished. So let me get my screen share up here. All right, I know you have a big agenda, so my goal is not to take too long, but if I'm rushing and talking too fast, please interrupt me and tell me to slow down a little bit.
Okay.
So here we are, land use regulations, chapter 7. I'm gonna skip down to you, objective of what we want to do with town council tonight. Okay, so what I wanted to get through tonight is reviewing the scope of the updates, kind of a refresher on why we were doing this. I know you're very familiar with the moratorium that's in place that led to this, how this is connected to that, and how we wanted to stay within a scope of work, along with the proposed new chapter 7 layout, which looks very different than what you see now, even though it's a lot of the same information. It's a very different look. And then we want to make sure you're aware of what we as staff kind of call bigger policy changes. And these are those changes that we want to make sure you understand that we have made. We didn't make them easily. We made them with a lot of discussions with planning commissioners. But I think that going over these, getting them in your head tonight, and so you're aware of them, then as you move forward, and you actually look at the code sections over the next month or two as you have time, you have in your head and you recognize what you're reading. So the effort here is to kind of get you the backbone information and help your review if you choose to review all of the sections in the next couple of weeks, kind of so it makes sense to you and you know what you're looking at, and you have some red flags in your head of things you might want to look at based on your personal interest or knowledge. So with that said, just kind of as a refresher, the primary objectives of this update were, one, to clarify the zoning and subdivision review process. So that includes application types along with how they're reviewed in the actual process. That was where the bulk of this comes from. And then while working on the process and the order and any confusion that we found or duplication between code sections, we cleaned up along the way. Going along with that, we then created a structure that can easily be updated. And so what you have in place is an outline, is a great code, and a lot of modifications that were made to make the process easier. And it also has areas that in the future, if the town decided to go ahead and make modifications or amendments or work on other topics, they'll be much easier for you just to go into that section and discuss them and potentially make modifications. So this is being laid out in a way that's really effective. It's very user friendly. It just looks different at the beginning until a user gets used to taking a look at it. So we did want to note, we've had a lot of meetings here with the Planning Commission and also town staff. Want to give thanks especially to Joanne as your engineer and Preston. They've helped us out a lot with their comments and their feedback and given us some really good insight based on their knowledge of the town. And then the Planning Commission has some great ideas and really gave us a lot of discussions. I also want to recognize there were things we tried to change, and they were really good about saying and recognizing the history of things that were in the code and why we should keep those. And that's actually really appreciated by us because we really wanted to make sure what we were doing is what fits Ridgway. So that is our goal, of course, also. So we had a lot of guidance and help from staff and the Planning Commission during all of these meetings as we got to the point that we're at. So where we're at right now before you is we pretty much have completed drafts, and that was what was in your packet. There obviously is a few changes still being made, and there probably may be a couple more based on public comment that we still receive. But I think that we're optimistic that all the big changes are made, and that it's, if anything is brought up by town council, we'll be able to readjust based on your input tonight. So wanted to mention that there was a lot of comments from Planning Commission, things we noted as we did our review, and also from the public comment we received, which were ideas that really need to still be rewritten, or can you do this now? And we really had to stick to the scope of the work and what we were focused on right now. So what we did to try to help the town out was also provide a document that you had in your packet that has a long list in a table form of future discussion items for the council to ideally look at least once a year and prioritize what's important to you, and maybe decide which ones you want to put on your update list, or for staff or Planning Commission to move forward with looking at. So we wanted to let you know you're going to have things you're going to ask why we didn't do. A lot of those, maybe check that table. If they're on there, it's that we felt it wasn't quite in the scope of the work right now that we're doing. So with that super fast, brief background, I want to go into what the code looks like today as you open it up. So you have a chapter 7. And what we do within chapter 7 is we kind of try to do a flow where you have basic administration processes or procedures and then standards. So the flow of chapter 7 is moving through administration, general provisions, things like that. And then you have procedures. What are your application processes looking like? And then standards, what is things in town required to be as far as things that you already have, such as residential design standards, to us adding some new proposed standards, such as industrial design standards. So with that flow, what you have is different sections within chapter 7. And the first one is general procedures, second is Planning Commission, and third is Board of Adjustment. That 1, 2, 3 is distributed to you in one document because they're pretty brief and we didn't make a whole lot of revisions to them. And then we get into the zoning regulations, which is section 4. That one's going to be a big one, if you've looked at it already, you probably noticed. That one's followed by subdivision regulations, which you see if you compare them, they're the same flow. So it's different topic, but it's very consistent as far as how you read it. And I think that really helps the user and the community and staff as a whole. And then we get into a planned unit development section along with an annexation section. So those are kind of the primary sections that we're working on. Through the Planning Commission's request, we actually have drafted a very basic Chapter 7, which you don't have because it's not being put out. It's for future conversations, but it's for affordable housing. And the reason that we have Chapter 7 and then we skip over to 8, which you have, or I'm sorry, for planned unit development, or sorry, for the annexation, you're going to notice a missing number 7. The reason for that is because that's not ready for the town to be going ahead and adopting. That's going to take a lot of discussion and fine tuning. But while we were working on this, we wanted to give you a placeholder. So that is in the back, kind of the background of everything. And that's why you're going to wonder why there's a Chapter 7 skipped. You'll talk about it sometime down the road when the council and Preston decides to take a look at that. Okay, so within each of those sections, such as zoning, subdivisions, and PUDs, we have regulations, review procedures, and approval criteria, your basic backbone to what you're processing with applications. With these, you can see what type of application you're submitting, what review process you're going to go through. And I have a few images that will show this during tonight's presentation. And then approval criteria. A lot of those were taken from what you already have. And just if they weren't really good, clarifying approval criteria, those were stated to be very clear. So the town knows that they know what they are reviewing exactly when an application is before them. So again, there's a lot of redistributing in the code. We pulled things out of the existing Chapter 6 and 7, which are building and licensing. And those were actually deleted out of those and brought into zoning because they made more sense in that area, especially with regards to some of the standards. So that's where we wanted you to be aware. It may look new sometimes, but it actually also was pulled in from other places and kept the same exact language. All right, so talking about these supplemental regulations, I'm not going to read through the whole list, but the ones on here that are in green are new regulations that we have drafted for the town and that the Planning Commission has reviewed. So we also have potentially, don't think we made many changes to any of the existing ones. We made a few tweaks to the residential design standards based on some comments from staff that they have historically seen have been confusion in how to interpret the language. So that's clarifying it. However, the black ones have mainly just been brought into the code or into Chapter 7 if they weren't already there. They've been alphabetized so that they're easy to find. And they have the regulations under the heading, and that regulation is for townwide. There's also a few exceptions that are pulled in. And so if you are reading these and you see, for example, the parking standards has some exceptions, that was already an exception, but it was in the HB district, for example. And so instead of having it sitting on its own out in kind of the middle of nowhere under a zone district, that parking exception for that zone district is now in parking. So when you want to know all your parking rights, you read them and then you're like, oh wait, I'm in this zone district. I have an exception I need to pay attention to. So again, a lot of these just redistributing, but we did want to note that the town already had some great commercial design standards. They were not within the code. They were a separate document that was adopted. Those have been brought into the code now. So you're going to see a new commercial design standards, but it's actually what you already had. It's just now being codified. And then with that, the Planning Commission brought up a great point that it might be good to have some basic design standards for industrial uses. So those were also drafted. They basically mimic your commercial design standards because it was kind of outside of the scope of what we were doing to get into a big discussion on industrial appearances. So you have a basic backbone for commercial, or for the commercial you have great because you've already had it. It's just been put into the code. And then the industrial, you have a good backbone to work off of now as you do reviews. So one of our favorite things we love doing is putting charts in. And by this, we think it really helps anyone who's proposing an application or wants to do something. So with this chart, it's actually clipped right out of chapter 4, and which is zoning. And then there's also one in the subdivision regulations and the PUD regulations. And what this does is it shows what application type you have, what section of code you need to refer to see the specific requirements. And then you read right across the line to see what status of pre-application meeting, completeness review, all the way up to who the decision-making body is. That's all on the chart. This is all explained in detail under those sections in the code, but this way someone can clearly realize whether a notice of hearing is required and things like that. So this just helps the user understand the process that they might have to go through based on an application type. Table of uses is another really big change that we made. However, by change, we want to know we made it look a lot different. We decided it was out of the scope of work to make a lot of changes to what uses are allowed where. So what we did was we took your existing zoning, all the zone districts have uses allowed by right or conditional uses. We wrote them all in this table, and we put them also under a category. So your far left column is a category. The next column over, these are the specific uses that are in the town code right now. And then what we do is we list every zone district, and you go across and you see, for example, just taking the top one, research and development. In the code right now, it's allowed by right in this is going to be a new one I'm going to throw at you too. Should have done that first. LI and GI, also currently known as I1 and I2. So can I have research and development in any of these? No. Now, the reason isn't that we made this up. This is taken exactly from what the town allows right now. We did make a few changes based on comments we heard. We added a few things that didn't currently exist. And I think, for example, one might be a cemetery, for example, nothing that's going to cause a lot of questioning or conflict on what we did. The biggest one we did spend a while talking to Planning Commission about is the town currently has a lot of types of manufacturing uses listed. And we found 4 or 5 alone that had the word metal in them. And we couldn't figure out exactly. It seemed like there was some confusion and discrepancy on where those should be allowed. They kind of contradicted each other based on the type of language was used. So what we did was we created a light, a medium, and a heavy manufacturing. And in the definition section of the code, those are defined and examples given. So those are now clarified for the community to see kind of, we think they fit better. The Planning Commission was still kind of pondering it. It was a new concept, and we understood that we took a lot of discretion into kind of trying to figure out how to classify them. So they did give us some suggestions. That's why you actually see a little bit of track changes in this, because this was more of a working document we had with the Planning Commission just to get their input and feedback. So every use that's in this second from the left column is defined in the definition section of the code now. So another big change is that we've added definitions for every type of use. So there's no more question of exactly what a brewery is versus a brew pub. And then the only other thing on this slide is I kind of hinted through, we had some comments from planning commissioners that the existing I1 light industrial 1 district and I2 industrial district 2 were confusing in names. And we did talk to the planning commission and staff, and everyone is on board. I1, if these go through as proposed, will become light industrial. I2 will become general industrial. So they're just a name switch. I1 is now LI, so you're going to see a different abbreviation. And with this, if the town chooses to adopt this down the road, when it comes up to the ordinance and readings, the zoning map will also get amended so that all the I1 is changed accordingly and I2 is changed accordingly to GI. So I feel like I'm talking fast, but I feel like I'm still taking too much time. So let me know if you need me to slow down here.
Great.
Okay, thank you. So 3 new zoning application types were added, and we wanted to note these. We don't want anyone to be caught surprised by wondering what we're doing here. So administrative adjustment is a very common type of application these days. And what it is for is if somebody is providing or requesting, someone is requesting up to a 10% administrative relief to a dimensional standard. So for example, if there was a 10-foot setback and required on the side lot line, and let's say that they had a really steep slope on one side, they could apply for an administrative adjustment only up to 10%, so 1 foot. And that could be reviewed by the town manager designee. And then there are certain standards that would need to get met with that. So very minor deviations from the code dimensional requirement standards. And by this, it's basically more of an efficient, an applicant doesn't need to go through a variance if there's a 1 foot that they're looking to adjust, for example. And if they have good reason and they can meet the criteria, it wouldn't need to go through a whole variance application and through that whole process. The second one we've added is a minor amendment to a conditional use permit. I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. It just kind of adds that process if there's a minor amendment, and a minor amendment is defined in the code language. And then site plan is the new big one. Site plans are reviewing basically a new development. So don't look at it as a subdivision where you have lots. Look at it as a building or a structure. And it's not going to count for single family. It's not going to be, sorry, by count, I mean required. It's not required for duplexes, and it's not required for certain small additions or remodels of commercial industrial type uses. So there are exceptions. Not everyone has to go through this, but what it does is it captures a process that reviews all the design requirements in the code and standards, and make sure that this development, this new structure, parking, landscaping, all is in compliance. It's also a chance for the town to make sure things like lighting are in check, and the engineering is also looked at. Is the drainage going to work with this new development? So site plan application, whereas it could be looked at for admittedly as an extra burden to somebody wanting to construct a commercial building, it's something that has a clear process, and the town has that full review to make sure it meets code requirements. And it honestly helps a person get through it really easily and quicker, because they get that done, they get it approved, and then they're off for their building permit already. And that building permit submittal, they've already had all of that review, all of the site details reviewed that are more of a planning related topic, such as parking, landscaping, utility layouts, things like that. I went fast. I understand that's a big topic, and I'll wait and let you guys ask me questions at the end if you have want some more clarification on that. And then another policy change we wanted to kind of emphasize is for you tonight is the planned unit development. So a planned unit development has frequently by a lot of communities and community members been looked at as like a new development, a subdivision. But technically it is a zoning layer. So when you have come in for a PUD, a planned unit development application, you are actually asking the town to let you create a new development that doesn't meet the code requirements that are for that existing zone district that you own property for, or that you want to develop. So the way that a PUD, we have pulled it out of subdivision, it's its own section, follows the application process and things like that, very similar to zoning and subdivision. But what you have is an applicant who wants to make changes, can't meet the existing zoning. Well, since they can't meet the existing zoning requirements, or maybe they can, but they would like to request some leniency and offer the town some benefits and kind of like a compromise to get some leniency in certain things, such as potentially density or height, they come to the town and they want to have this new zone layer basically created. So the underlying zone district stays the same, but what the town should be how the town should be processing a PUD is you have your official zone map, and this is just a clip from another town's, where you can see here, they have green is open space, yellow is like a residential, pink is mixed use. These hashes show that anything on any of these properties is going to be at the crossroads at Frisco PUD. And they can still see they have what their underlying zoning is on the map. So it doesn't take over a zoning, it only overlays the underlying zoning. How you do that is by getting a development plan, which shows how the site will be laid out and developed, and a guide, which is a narrative. And that's what usually puts in what those modifications to the underlying zone district that applicant is requesting. So if an applicant comes in and they want to have more density, but they're willing to cluster it and protect maybe a environmentally sensitive area, then the town processes it as a PUD. They work with the town and the applicant together to kind of meet a middle ground that will work, where the town's not giving everything away to some new development, but maybe they are getting a open space preservation in it, or affordable housing, something like that, that the town recognizes as a need. And then that is recorded, that PUD plan and document. And it's basically a new zoning layer overlaid over the existing one. And any development within that area will need to follow that PUD requirements. And if it's not in the PUD requirements, they revert to the underlying zoning. So look at it as a rezoning, not a subdivision. And that's why it's its own section, because you're going to go through a PUD. And then if you get approved for a PUD and recorded, then you're going to come in and actually subdivide, split the lots up, things like that. It's a process that will follow a PUD approval. Standards can include, for now, we kept them pretty basic, but we put in some standards to require affordable housing and also installation of EV spaces, just to try to kind of capitalize on what the town of Ridgway has expressed to us as priorities for their community. And then you can see there's a chart in that PUD chapter or section also that goes through the process for a PUD, a major amendment, or a minor amendment. All right, performance standards is not new, but very new place. So currently in the code, under certain zone districts, primarily the industrial districts, but there are also a few under other districts, are some kind of random performance standards, such as radioactivity, odor, noise. We pulled all of those out of those individual zone districts and we put them into general performance standards. So these are now townwide. There's no reason why they shouldn't be townwide. They're things you wouldn't want, or you would want to restrict or possibly regulate or encourage based on anywhere in town, not just if you're in industrial use or in an industrial district. So these are not new to the town, but they've been pulled from different sections, put into one. So you'll see that and it will look new to you, but again, it's just reorganization for you. All right, I get to pause. I am going to pass it over to TJ at this point. He's going to go through kind of a general development review process for you to try to help explain how all of this connects together for an applicant. So.
Excellent. Well, thanks so much, Katie. That's a lot of information real fast. So I'm sure you all have some questions and we'll throw some more at you right now. So next slide, please, Katie. So first, again, this is kind of a higher level. So we're kind of taking a step up, if you will, in the thought process. And just to kind of reiterate the review process that all applications would go through. There's the pre-application. The application is then submitted, it's reviewed for completeness, it's sent to referral agencies for review, and there's that cycle there of review and resubmittal before it comes to planning commission, and that's specified through the code process that Katie was talking about. And only once it gets to the point where staff, it meets all the standards and staff feels it's ready to go, to meet all those standards and meet the criteria of the town, then it will be scheduled for public hearings. Next slide, Katie. So then we break it down. Oh, hold on. So then we look at different application types. So now we're going kind of down, actually up another level, if you will, types of applications. And this is a very basic, potentially oversimplification of the process, but essentially development process begins with annexation, then you go to platting, rezoning, site design in the site plan process, and then to building permits. So that's just general from a linear standpoint. There's always a back and forth between some of these things, but at least for discussion purposes, we want to use that. So go ahead and throw that first box on. Thanks. So this is what right now your PUD process and your site, subdivision process kind of combine these three together. And so what we're doing in essence is separating them a little bit. And the idea there is that we're managing impacts, reviewing for impacts at the appropriate time in the development review process. We're not letting anyone get away with anything, but we might be spreading it out over different types of applications. So what you see right now in this box is essentially the current PUD process. Katie, next. This next one is what you're seeing in your current building permit process. And so really then the reason to highlight this is the site plan. That site plan seems like it's extra, but it's really managing those impacts in a development process at the appropriate time. So next slide, Katie, please. So subdivisions, I want to talk just real briefly on the subdivision process. This is one that, as Katie mentioned, some things we threw out there to change, and we actually reverted back to where the town is right now on this for some very, very good reasons. But I want to reiterate that the town subdivision process, and as it's laid out in the code, is still a sketch plan requirement, a preliminary plat requirement, then you move to construction, and then you move to final plat for as-built, and that's when you record the plat, and the lots that are created can be sold or issued a building permit. So that is the current process. That's how it will be. The one thing that I'd mention here too is that we're adding different subdivision types to this application. You may recall, for example, the Habitat for Humanity triplex, townhome triplex that we worked on not too long ago, that we're creating a townhome plat so that you would still go through this process, but during the final plat component after construction, you'd go in and create those interests, the subdivision after the project, the building is complete. And so we're memorializing that a little bit more clearly. So you see a lot of different types of subdivisions. Okay, next, yep. And so Katie did a great job talking about this in depth. So I won't harp on it too much, but I did want to again highlight that we're nesting the PUD process in the rezoning component. And to reiterate that we will have a PUD guide and a development plan that are reviewed with that, as well as the difference between that and other zoning is that it's negotiated. And some might say, and actually I think Mayor Clark is the one who mentioned it at maybe the last planning commission meeting that, oh, so we're trying to de-incentivize or decentivize PUDs. And the answer is yes. Right? The idea being that we want development, we want the code, straight zoning, straight processes to fit most of what's happening. PUDs historically in Ridgway have been the go-to, and those, as you know, are complex. And so we're trying to say, hey, you know what, it's negotiation. That's why we have some additional standards for public benefits. But the idea is that we want to push people towards really trying to fit the zoning districts that are there. And then if they need to, they can go ahead and create their own zoning district requirements through the PUD process. Okay, next slide, Katie. And then the last one, I won't harp on too much, but again, here's where the site plan goes. The objectives, Katie mentioned that we look at that overall site design against the standards. And the big component, if you remember the example in town, is the firehouse, where they came in for a building permit and realized some site constraints that there were 2 properties that needed to be, lot line that needed to be vacated, variances that they had to get, and so on and so forth. So this allows a process to vet through all of those before all of the effort and money is spent on designing and engineering a structure, so that you can get all of those other site planning and engineering components before you go to a building permit. Next slide. And I'm going to turn it back to Katie.
Okay, so tentatively, this is what our hope is and what our plan is, but wanting to hear what your feedback is tonight before this is set in stone and published, obviously. We are hoping to move this forward to the Planning Commission adoption hearing at their next meeting on the 25th of April. And then bring it forward to the town council for a first reading of the ordinance on May 10th. Town council second reading on June 14th. And before it becomes effective, which would be on this schedule, July 14th, we would like to host a work session for the development community. And this will be a chance to really explain exactly the layout and answer any questions that they have so far, and just make sure everybody is on board and understands. So if they're ready to move forward with an application, they're not trying to understand the code after it becomes effective. We just want to make sure we're trying to help out the citizens and future applicants understand what they need to do and what to design to be on track with the code requirements. So that obviously date has not been determined. So tentatively, this is our upcoming timeline for you. So. And then that was it for us. Pass it back to you guys for questions and women.
All right, thanks, Katie. Thanks, TJ. Who's got questions?
I did have one question, specifically on the performance standards. Should lighting and dark sky, I know, I feel like I keep saying this, but should the dark sky restrictions, help me out with the word here.
Be in the performance.
Should that be in the performance section? So it's not coming back, so it's not an issue like Space to Create was. I'm just trying to get ahead of it.
It's funny because it's almost bold, right? Where it exists where it exists because those are the lighting design standards. But there is the nuisance component of it that goes along with the list of things that were included under performance standards.
Yeah. I just, I feel like it should be a standard. If we're gonna do this for the long haul, lighting should be a standard.
Yeah, and it is. The lighting regs are a major portion of the code. I wouldn't say wrestled, but one of the things that has been interesting about this process with TJ and Katie is their take on performance standards. A lot of stuff was put in performance standards in the old code, and they've, correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, but I think your philosophy is that a lot of stuff that we've had in performance standard sections is, in your opinion, better in a table somewhere so that it's easier to kind of parse. And if it's not clear, these guys have done a great job of creating a number of tables that sort of address all the different zoning categories and cross-reference the things that are allowed and not allowed in those zones. And of course, the lighting code applies to all of them. So what do you guys think about the question?
Yeah, that's a great point. So we didn't modify the existing lighting regulations. And you have right now in your code, so this was kept in there, that they have to be shielded so no light rays are emitted at angles, allowing it to pass directly off the premise. I don't think there's anything that specifically says dark sky right now is a requirement. I think you have enough in there that talks about it, but I think it's something for us to just take a look at and see if that should be looked at right now as simple, or put it on the list for future discussions to make sure it has enough information in it. What's in here now for outdoor lighting is what's already in the code. We didn't modify that. So excellent question.
Thank you.
And it doesn't, like she says, it doesn't specifically use the term dark sky compliant, but the wording is taken from that.
Wasn't there a dark sky ordinance past with some.
Well, it's what our lighting code is now, yes.
Yes.
But it wasn't couched in terms of dark skies or dark sky international or anything like that. It just is the technical requirement that light be full cutoff and escape from property.
Because the lighting industry has adopted what they call dark sky compliant lamps. It's a whole new series of hardware available.
Yeah, but if you put them on the front of a house that's all white, it reflects everywhere. So like, or if you're the lights, well, but if you're the lights at Space to Create, that we're theoretically compliant, like. What we're realizing, I think that's Polly's question around the performance standards, is what we're realizing is sometimes a thing that is dark sky compliant by code winds up in practice sometimes not, but being a nuisance in some way.
Right. Well, I did notice, Katie, and TJ, I was looking at the last few pages of the document in our packet. And it's a nice table that is titled Future Land Use Regulation Discussion Items. And one of those is 7-4-6C. I'm sorry, 7-4-6K. Outdoor lighting regulations is something we need to consider, although it seems like there's a typo here because the next column over says, have there been any problems with the sign regulations, licensing? So it seems like
We'll fix that.
that was a mistake. But yeah, I mean, so Polly, it's in here on page, what is this? Page 256 of 257. The point at the very end of the document, that points out that maybe our outdoor lighting regs could be discussed a little further. Terry, I think Beth makes a good point, and I'm not even sure, but basically the Space to Create team and Stryker were under the impression that the lights that were first put up on that overhang in front of the community space were technically dark sky compliant. I can't believe that they were, but they definitely weren't compliant with the wording in our code that says no light shall trespass off the property. So I think we need maybe a little bit of hybrid between whatever the lighting industry calls dark skies
Land, and then there's the application.
Yeah.
Well, because I'm sure they were told because it was downcast that it wasn't going to be a problem, because it's underneath that porch, and it's the same thing. I mean, I've seen it in residential situations where I can see why it would be considered to be that way, but if you're directly across the street, or if you're at the same level as that thing, then it is.
It's tricky, so I think it's definitely
I had the same issue with the secondary school. They put in some new dark sky compliant lamps, but they happen to be 50 feet higher than my bathroom window. And so they shine right into my window, even though technically they're compliant.
But so in my view, that would mean that they're not compliant with the Ridgway lighting code, which clearly states there should be no light trespass off property. So, I mean, that's what I think we need to rectify is that's our goal, is that the lights stay on the property.
And it does seem though that there is a hole somewhere in our code, because it's really unfortunate for property owners to buy a light fixture, pay to have it installed, and then come to find out
Right.
their light is escaping, like we.
Yeah, I don't think I don't think the hole's in our code. I think the hole is in the dark sky, the lighting industry's dark sky.
So they're not making sure that they're like meet our code, they're seeing dark sky and saying it's gonna be okay.
It's also, I mean, ultimately, it's a performance element of it there.
Right.
I mean, even in my case, in my house, all of my stuff is LED and dark sky compliant. The elevation, we didn't even notice in their three-dimensional models that the span of the light, because the elevation of my house is more visible than I ever expected it or wanted it to be at the house. So in terms of the performance discussions, I don't know where that happens, in whether that's with staff or where the communication is with the architect or builder. At what point can that be highlighted? Like where do you discuss that physically to look at the nuances, or does that stuff just get lost in the mix?
No, so we're getting a little off track, but specs are submitted as part of the building permit application, thoroughly reviewed by or I like to think thoroughly reviewed by not only Mike Gill, but Andrew, I'm forgetting Andrew's last name. He's the person at CPS tasked with reviewing planning side of building permit applications. So we go based on those specs, and then Mike Gill inspects in the field through the construction process. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but again, to Polly's question, or to her point on it being a specific performance standard, I think Katie had mentioned that we can take a look at that, take a look at our regulations and see what we have and what we might need to adjust further.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Oh, do you have anything else on lighting? Sorry, I was gonna.
No, I just was gonna say that works for me, and thank you so much for, I understand the letter of the law, I just wanna make sure that the intent of the law is also upheld.
Maybe I'm imagining this, but I remember when we did the landscaping regs, there were some like example sketches that got made, and when I'm reading through the different subdivision types, like some of them are really clear, some of them, you know, like the amended plat, like what falls under an amended plat versus needing to be a minor subdivision.
That's a really good point.
I'm totally coming at this because I went through a subdivision process recently, and now anything that has a proposed public improvement isn't a minor subdivision. So would that have kicked me into a major subdivision? Would that be an amended plat? Like, it just seems like everything, once you know which box you fall into, it seems super clear. But if you're not a developer, and there were some changes we made to our zoning and our land use regs to try to encourage houses to be built on parcels, which means sometimes you're gonna have people who aren't developers trying to split lots. I could use some additional guidance on what box I fall into. And maybe that's the pre-plan with town staff, but it still doesn't give you an idea of how much money you're looking at going into something.
No, really good point. Really good point.
Just offer, and I don't know if this is where you were going with it, but as part of this process, we'll be receiving some end products, some visuals to assist anyone coming off the street wanting to inquire about any sort of process or provide their situation and have us try to walk them through what the process is. So, sorry if I'm missing the mark, but
No, that was it.
TJ or Katie talked to this, but as part of this, and they've already it's pretty good strides in putting some of these documents together. We'll have some visuals ready to go to provide to folks.
Okay.
I'm a visual person. I always have been and always will be. You can talk to me all day long, but until I see it, I'm not going to grasp it. So I think that'll go a long way.
To that point, Katie, can I ask a question? About the R's and the O's and everything else in the charts? And this is my OCD speaking to your letters. Is there any way to color code those? It's a little bit of a word salad on the first hit visually. So like you have the legends up top with the R, meaning required. But and sorry, this is an aesthetic thing, but at least in the, visual literacy part of it, if they were color coded, it might be easier to figure out which box to go to right away.
No, that's a good point. I don't know if we could color code because the code is put up on MuniCode. We could definitely have like the copy in-house or the PDF off of a website for the code be that way. But we can also try to think of maybe another way to make it stand out a little better. So no, any of these thoughts are great for us to keep in mind because we look at this stuff so much. We need to hear these thoughts, even on, the application types and things so that we can go back and take a look at it. So we'll make a note that we try to clarify or make that clearer to look at.
Yeah, even in that, and I was trying to scroll back to one of the charts where it's, it's kind of upper center horizontal. It took a while to find that. To then be able to find that legend. So even if something like that is boldface or something along those lines, I think visually that could help it tracking. And then also going to the end of your presentation about getting this in front of the development community for a workshop. I know the date was to be determined, but how are we going to get that word out and how can we get this stuff in front of people as a draft to them so they have a chance to navigate it and get first, second blush on it before we actually workshop it.
So we've already provided several opportunities to not only the development community, but a number of communities to the general public as well. So yeah, once we pinpoint a date, and we have a number of communication channels and direct contact information for the folks that we've worked with directly over the past few years, folks that we may not have worked directly with, but that have inquired about certain things. So there's a bunch of different ways for us to do the outreach, just in a similar way. I don't remember when we had a developer type workshop, I think that was in January or February, and even December, I'm forgetting, but anyway, it would be a similar type of approach to communicating that.
I was mostly worried because it was mentioned it was going into the summer there. And, those guys are busy, as we all are. Anyway, but thank you. Otherwise, once my eyes were conditioned to know where to look for those codes, then it started to become intelligible.
I'm wondering if we could do some sort of cross-hatching or some sort of texture. Like, it's a good point. I'm looking at Unicode right now and doesn't look like they're going to support color.
I was thinking Palatino in a chartreuse.
That would be interesting.
I like the bold italic underline regular idea. That's
Yeah.
not.
I think maybe we don't need to workshop this, and I think we could say it could use some visual love and
Love
move
that.
on.
Love that for us.
If I may, not to belabor it, but just so that I understand, the concern is the ability. So there's an R in the code in the table, but understanding what that R means. So getting the Q up to the legend, if you will. Is that correct?
That's specifically what I was stating. Yeah, just the legend, as they would say, the legend was buried in this.
Yep. Gotcha. That makes good sense. We can easily do something to highlight that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I thought TJ was going to tell you how there's no hope in me coming up with a good design look because I have no design creativity.
That's where we're stronger as a team, Katie.
Yes.
And I've got boxes of crayons.
All right, what else? Other questions up here? Any questions in the audience or in Zoom? Have you been here for a while? Have you been paying attention to this? I didn't see you come in.
I just came in. No, I'm sorry. I
That's all right.
missed part of this.
It's all good. It's for us language nerds, it's been really fun, but I don't know how many of us there are. Anybody else have questions?
That's an amazing amount of work. Congratulations to get it to this.
Yeah. I just came in. I was really nervous about this going in, and I couldn't be happier with the way it's been going. So, anything you want to add? Okay, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
I like the idea of the development community open house and getting the word out everywhere we can about that. The problem these days, you have the papers, all you have to do. You got to do your email blast and your Facebook and your Instagram. And, probably 6 different emails. But
Now we're doing ads in the paper again, so that'll be another.
Yep.
Way.
And I would imagine, maybe you could access Mike's sort of database of builders that he works with and make sure that they're on the listserv, something. I don't know, anything we can do.
I can't remember what Mike Bill's database looks
I'm sure it's handwritten.
like. That's what I mean.
All right, one last chance, anybody on Zoom have any questions? All right, thank you guys, really appreciate it.
Thank you for your time. Have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Thank you.
You too, see you soon. All right, that brings us to a bunch of various items having to do with financing and whatnot on the Space Crate project. So the first one is item number 10, review and action on landlord consent estoppel and agreement between the town of Ridgway, Art Space Ridgway Limited Partnership and Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. Sounds like Bo's on this one.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So with the materials that are in the packet, one of the conditions that was levied against the town when we received some of the the original DOLA funding was that in the event the town did not proceed with the Space to Create project, the funding would need to be applied within the parameters of the Energy Assistance program. We've met the conditions with the creation of Space to Create, so feel like it's appropriate to release the covenant that's against the project.
Great. This is very straightforward, so I think unless anybody has any questions, we could probably just have a motion to approve this agreement and get it recorded and sent back to Chapa.
If I can just jump in.
Go ahead.
Well, I think you were talking about the resolution releasing the property use covenant. The item before him is that landlord consent estoppel and agreement. That's a bit different.
Yeah, I'm sorry, am I one ahead of us on the agenda?
I think so.
I think there's some mix up on the agenda.
Yeah,
we might
be
be.
the agenda.
Yeah.
But there's three different documents. The first is the landlord consent estoppel and agreement. As you said, very straightforward. I think the subordination, non-disturbance, and attorney agreement after that. And then the third one is the matter that Bo just explained as that release of the property use covenant that was put in place back in 2016 or 2017.
So which one? Well, so number 10 then, Bo, is the landlord consent estoppel and agreement between the town of Ridgway, Art Space, and Chapa.
Yeah, again, my apologies with respect to the order of the agenda. I think with the estoppel agreement, again, somewhat self-explanatory with respect to Art Space is getting permanent financing in place with respect to the construction project being complete. So with the refinancing, it's asking for us to subordinate our position.
Okay, again, questions up here? Any questions online or in the room? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. Moved by Terry, seconded by Russ. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. So then the second one is review and action on the subordination, non-disturbance, and attorney agreement between Art Space and Chapa, the town and Chapa.
And so 9 and 10 kind of piggyback upon each other with respect to 9 having the estoppel and then 10 having the subordination. So again, just allowing for Space to Create to refinance on the project and get the permanent financing in place now that the project is complete.
Okay, again, straightforward, necessary to execute now.
10 and 11 now.
Move along. What's that?
Except for they're 10 and 11 now.
It's all right. So any questions either on Zoom or in the room here on council? So motion approved. I move to approve the subordination, non-disturbance in the tournament agreement.
Second.
Motion made by Russ, second by Terry. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. That takes us to what on some agendas is item number 12. On yours, it's probably item number 11, Bo. Resolution number 23 -07 release of property use covenant, which is I think the one you first addressed.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this is the one that I started with. So again, we've met the terms of the DOLA financing. So it's my opinion, it's appropriate to release the restrictive covenant that's in place.
Gotcha. All right. Again, questions here in the room on Zoom? Be straightforward. So motion approved. Move to approve resolution number 2023-07, release of property covenant, town of Ridgway Energy Impact Assistance Study number 8389.
Second.
Motion made by Russ, second by Beth. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thanks, Bo.
Thank you.
All right, you're up on this next one too. This is item number 13 on my agenda, review and action on temporary access agreement between the town of Ridgway, Echo Properties Corporation, Ridgway Depot Fund, City, Ridgway Railroad Museum, and the Erie County Ranch History Museum.
So, yep, thank you, Mayor. This is a update of a temporary access agreement that the town has in place with Echo Properties, the owner of the parcel to the east of Town Hall, where the Ranch History Museum will hope to be established and the Railroad Museum is operating. The term is for a revocable license for the end of this year until December 31st of 23, which allows for the town, to the extent that there was a need to revoke it, 60 days notice. So it's just an extension of the existing license agreement that we have in place.
Right, and for those of you on council who are relatively new, it might be helpful to know the history here that we've been trying to negotiate with all the parties involved with the actual piece of ground to resolve a trail easement along the river there. And I believe that the owner of Echo Partners or Echo Properties Corporation doesn't want to do that until we can prove that we have a trail easement from the next property north, which I believe is
Glen
Falls property, right? And we've had sort of a handshake agreement with him over the years, and we've been trying to get him to actually formalize that for a while. And at some point, we can get that done, and we can get Echo Properties to agree to let that trail go through the corner of their property. Then we can move ahead with an agreement on the access. But until then, we feel like we need a little leverage. So that's the history on this. Any other questions about it? Any thoughts? Anybody on Zoom or in the room have questions? John, I see you're here just checking in to make sure we get this right.
I just wanted to see if there were any updates.
Okay.
How many years has this temporary been in effect?
It's an annual renewal and it's been going on for what, 2 or 3 years now?
Since 2018. But part of that didn't surface in 2018, that came out.
Right.
I can't remember the trail part joined. I think that was later.
Yeah, not much later, towards the end of the original negotiation.
It layered on. Yeah.
And is there an indication that it would be permanently remedied?
That's the hope.
We've got it's a yes from us, as long as everybody that is in agreement on the riverfront. And we just don't want to cause a condition of trespassing.
So staff's had a number of conversations with you and your team over the last year and a half. It's one of those tough deals. Trying to get everyone in the same room, everyone to agree, and so that's something we're going to continue to work on.
And the one thing that I'll add is that trying to set up a time with Bob Thomas, the attorney for Echo Mountain, in an attempt to re-engage in these discussions to continue the negotiations with respect to riverfront access and trail connectivity for the town.
Sounds good. Thanks, Paul. Any other questions, comments on this one?
I guess one quick thing, this thing seems to run out at the end of the year and we're third of the way through the year on renewing. Is that? I'm just curious why. If it runs out at December 31st, is that its typical expiration?
I believe so.
Okay, so we just wait until April to get to renew it, or?
I think that's essentially it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just something that's on the list, and To be candid, I think kind of hoping that it might kickstart conversations, and it never really does, and so we're here in April.
Okay,
So we are
fair enough.
Didn't we do it
kind of a tactic.
last April too? Because I'm pretty sure I've seen this.
Yeah, we do it every year, so, yeah.
I just have to input that, they've been waiting for a phone call, so. That they've just been.
Right. A lot of it is just trying to get people to respond and, like Preston said, get everybody in the same room somehow, and that's a challenge.
Is there, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, like,
Is there a way that we can like help mobilize this, move it forward?
So the conversation, we've attempted
Great.
conversations, and yes, it's something that will, as Bo just said, we'll reach out to Bob Thomas, the legal counsel for, I think, the property owner, Ridgway Properties. So yeah, it's definitely something that we'll pursue.
yeah, I don't think there's anything the council can do per se. I think,
Or me.
yeah, and I think, one of the things that every time this comes up, I'm thinking, okay, I need to figure out how to get a hold of Glenn Pauls again and see if we can. I think if we could get Glenn Pauls to formalize his allowance of a trail access to his property, that would go a long ways towards being able to say, hey, we got it here. Can we just get through the corner of your property and have actual trail connectivity there? And the concern, as John said, has always been, trespassing, AKA liability. If there are people crossing the corner of that property, the owners of Echo Properties have always been concerned that that's a liability and that it's trespassing.
Well, no, actually, it wasn't on our parcel. It was actually creating an issue where they go across Glen Falls. Because we've always said it's okay on ours.
No, that's not true. And
That's not,
yeah, I don't know that it's best that we kind of go through the machinations of the negotiation here
Okay.
in an open session tonight.
yes.
But the one thing I would say to the Mayor Pro Tem's point with respect to the term, I think we want to keep it relatively short so that we can kind of continue to engage in these discussions with the effort to find a long-term solution.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions on Zoom? Any more questions up here? The motion. Move to approve the temporary access agreement.
Second though.
Motion by Russ, second by Beth. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. Thanks, Bo.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.
Item number 14 is review and action on agreement for transportation system grant management between the town of Ridgway, City of Ray, County of Ray, and Montrose County Senior Citizen Transportation Incorporated. This is an exciting one that I think you guys have probably heard dribs and drabs about, but it's actually pretty close to happening. It's up to speed, Preston.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I mean, you just said it. It's very exciting to be at this point. Hopefully you read the memo. You should know. Well, I would hope that you know the background now, but the background's in the memo. Before you is an agreement. It sets forth the payment requirements, the agreement term and scope of the project. And it also commits the participants to cooperating with each other to provide timely matching fund payments and to agree on appropriate payment schedules, which is currently being done. That includes date and times of service, winter and summer schedules, and pickup and drop off locations. As I said, working on that currently for the initiation of the service here in the next 6 weeks or so. Participants also need to cooperate in making sure the operation runs smoothly and on time, adjusting the fares for each year. It's a 3-year term on this pilot program, as well as regularly reviewing the stop locations and customer feedback to implement changes that will enhance the rider experience. As you might recall, the county has a 25% match requirement. The town expressed a commitment last summer to this project and those match requirements. That's memorialized in resolution 22-07. Our share of the 25% match requirement estimated at $28,000 during year 1. That's this fiscal year, and just north of $15,000 for years 2 and 3, 2024 and 2025 of the project. Those amounts are not set in stone, subject to variability. But you know, a lot went into trying to pinpoint a pretty close estimate on what those contributions would be from each participating entity. I mentioned this already, stop locations are being finalized. All Points Transit just developed a survey that we're putting out now to solicit input on the service plan for this new bus route. The van's supposed to get here, I think, in a couple of weeks, right, John?
Yeah, somebody mentioned that it might be up and running in 6 weeks last night.
Well, the service, but I think the van might.
Yeah, I think the van's be delivered quite soon.
So early summer is what we're shooting for now, and All Points and everyone have been great to work with and collaborating on this project. So I think that's the gist of it. Again, before you use the agreement for transportation system grant management.
Thanks, Preston. Any questions?
I know that the van is in the hopper and coming down the pipe right now, but has there been any discussion of going EV from their side, either for this or for future investment?
That was an element to the conversation initially.
Cost prohibitive?
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what, you know, what the conversation was, but yeah, I imagine it was cost prohibitive. I don't know if we ever solicited, All Points ever solicited prices for an EV van of that size.
Do you know the capacity by chance?
And I think it's was it 10?
I was gonna say 14, that's the number that sticks in my head. It's 12, 14. That was my recollection. And I think we committed to a bike rack. We talked about having a Wi-Fi. You know, the goal is to make it web bar. Well, Terry's gonna take care of the web bar. No, just try and make it as comfy and enticing as possible. And we can share All Points is Sarah, Sarah's last name.
Sarah.
So bad in names. Anyway, the ED of All Points has been great to work with. She sent a spreadsheet recently that had a tentative schedule, talked about stops, and I'm really excited. I think it's going to be really helpful for the community. So, any other questions? And to address your question, I know there's some new funding coming down that's relatively new that is to support creating EV fleets and municipal governments. So it's worth exploring. My feeling about this is I think this is going to be a home run. I think it's going to be really successful. And I would guess within a couple of years, we'll be looking to buy another bus. And at that point, we can talk EV and we can talk about replacing the original.
I have an answer. Over the 700,000 electric vehicles sold, none of them are fully accessible to wheelchair users because the battery is on the bottom and the vehicle needs to be able to go down, and you have to cut out 14 inches under.
For the lowering?
For the lowering, and you have to be able to lower the floor of the van to make the seat accessible, or the wheelchair to be able to get in so that people are not off with their beans. Yeah.
Jake is his hand.
Contacts. But yeah, that's a.
Thanks.
I'll figure it out.
Go ahead, Jake.
Yep, I think Polly hit it on the head. Also, cost is a factor. This was a discussion at the county as well. There was desire to go EV if we were able to, but we did discuss maybe. I think it's going to be up to All Points or maybe the city to actually make the purchase, but perhaps it could be possible to find a used van, maybe a surplus Telluride Express van or something like that, and just keep our eye on the ball to try and go electric in the near future. I have a feeling that this program will be popular, and I hope we can expand it, and maybe the next vehicle can be EV.
Yep, I agree.
Cool. Yeah, and just last thing I'll say is, I mean, said this a few times, but I gotta give kudos to the city of Uray for putting the grant application together in a really short amount of time and getting that grant funding to make this a possibility. Big deal. And so, you know, pilot program, really testing it out. I agree. I think it'll be on a lot of people's radar and have a lot of interest. So we'll gauge it as we go.
In the document, Sarah Curtis is the executive director. Here in the document. And thank you, Preston, for mentioning that. Silas deserves a big shout out for all his hard work on this, for sure. All right, someone want to make a motion?
I move to approve the agreement for transportation system grant management between the town of Ridgway, city of Uray County, Montrose County Senior Citizens Transportation Inc.
Seconded.
Motion by Russ, seconded by Polly. All in favor? Opposed? That's unanimously. That brings us to item number 15. Review and action on intergovernmental agreement between the town of Ridgway and Uray County for the use of Ridgway Community Center for emergencies.
That was pretty much it.
Pretty straightforward.
It's an NDA that affords Uray County the right to use town hall, the community center specifically, as an additional emergency operations center whenever necessary. It's just a formality, something good to have in place. Staff always supports it. And we're having conversations with the school district about reunification, the town hall serving as a backup reunification site. The 4-H center is the desired spot there. God forbid anything bad happens, but it doesn't for town hall to be backup for something like that.
Yeah, because your school, the plan is, in the event of a forest fire in the amphitheater, we would be to the 4-H center. But if there was an event there, we need to come here.
Okay. I think that one, this is as straightforward as they get. I'll entertain any other questions, but otherwise somebody can make a motion.
I move to approve the IGA for use of the Ridgway Community Center for emergencies.
Second.
Motion by Beth, seconded by Russ. All in favor? Opposed? Unanimously, thank you. Item number 16. Resolution number 23-05 expressing opposition to statewide emergency preemptions in Senate Bill 23-213. So you're all familiar with that. The staff report from Preston. I'm hoping some of you have actually gone so far as to contact your state senator, make some phone calls or send some emails. This is, well, it appears that we wouldn't necessarily be impacted specifically the way that the bill is written right now in Uray County. It still is just such a ridiculous overreach and underfunded. And I mean, I think the goals are valuable, but the way they're going about it is really a giant hammer.
Yeah, it's really a slap in the face to communities like Ridgway trying to work on the problem, and a blunt instrument trying to force other communities that are not doing their part, and putting us all in the same category.
It seems like it was lifted right from Gavin Newsom's program in California.
But I mean, and all of these things have some underlying basis for why they're important, because there's communities that aren't entertaining more dense housing and aren't entertaining solutions, but that's, yeah, doesn't fit across the board.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions about this one?
This is a little bit of a soapbox situation. I'm stepping on my soapbox. I totally understand council's opposition to the housing bill. I agree with you 100%. But I think this is a really great place that we can start a new conversation. Is this on?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's just in my face. All right, cool. So I want to say the town of Ridgway, the council, everyone has done an amazing job with the changes that we've already started to implement with the 2020 changes, and talking about the subdivision updates here. I wish I was here for the earlier part of the conversation. I'm sorry I wasn't. But I think there's some pieces that we can take from this legislation and try to put Ridgway ahead of the curve. I think we're all kind of going in that direction. And I think the vacant home tax, talking about maybe an affordable home fund that you guys have all been talking about, local housing authority, tweaking our regulations, these are all great things. But I do think we need to look more at our single family zoning. I think that too often it's said that the zoning has always been that way. This is what it is. This is how it's always been. We're not looking to change. And I don't think that's necessarily true. I think a lot of those zoning regulations go back 100 years, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less per town. But I've always struggled with the fact that in Ridgway, you need 2 town lots to build.
But you don't.
You don't anymore.
You don't anymore?
It's really true.
Okay, it's really true.
That was raised by question. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm sorry, I'm here to start this conversation. I want to work together. I want to be a piece of this.
You are.
Well, thank you. And to continue on, if I could just kind of,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not great at this public speaking. I think, people used to live in smaller houses, and nowadays there's this societal responsibility that people think, everyone has to have a 2,500 square foot home. And I know, I think it's killing us. I think it's making things really expensive. I think it's really hard on our resources. I think generations coming up, it's just not going to happen. Our population's doubled in my lifetime. If you think about how many more people are on the globe, how are we going to house them? We have to think outside of the box. And I really think Ridgway is an amazing town, and we can really do some really unique things. And I think we are doing some unique things, and I thank you all for that. With a quick, smaller homes are more efficient. They're more sustainable. I see the projects going on with the Habitat for Humanity, which at this point to me is an absolute travesty. What's going on over there? I see what's going on with the Space to Create, and I ask, is the Space to Create full?
Yeah.
It is. That's awesome. I mean, I think it's a total success. The Wetterhorn Homes project coming in, these are all pieces of the puzzle, but I question a lot of the wasteful spending. I know these are by nonprofits for the most part, but the people doing the work aren't nonprofits. The contractors that come in and do the work, they're making profit. And I think there's a lot of greed going on. And I don't know if they're a piece of our solution for our town, but I feel like the council, when Habitat walks in the door, people almost bow down to them. You guys can have anything you want. And I think we're trying to be a piece of that solution too. And I don't want people to bow down to me. That's not what I'm asking for. But I want to work together. I want to work together with the town. I want to work together with the council. The AMI limits that have been put on some of these different habitats, Space to Create, Wetterhorn Homes, it's really, really difficult. I mean, I'm sure you guys know that, that 30 to 80 AMI at the Space to Create. It's brought in a lot of really good service people, but it's priced out so many people. The Wetterhorn Homes, below 100% AMI, that's really hard.
Goes to 120.
Yeah, you have to be under 120.
And then ones in the triangle that are 125, those ones.
With the mortgage rates where they are today, those numbers they're almost impossible. The project that we've been working on at Parkside, for those of you who don't know, it's the 3 homes in Parkside that me and my husband were working on. We had a little bit of a snafu with the bank at the beginning of our project, and we almost lost our construction loan because they couldn't get an appraisal on a deed restricted lot. It was really funky. So we then went to the IDF, the Impact Development Fund, which we could have gotten the funding from them, but that would have put the 120 AMI restriction on that property as well. And it just didn't, the numbers didn't work out. You know, we couldn't pencil those numbers. It just didn't work. So the more grants and government funding that we get, the more restrictions that we deal with. Some of the restrictions on the Wetterhorn, I'm just like, oh dear God. I mean, someone could lose their job and their home. That just seems devastating to me. You know, I've read that the board can make exceptions for people, but it seems insane that that's an exception, that you could lose your job and your housing, then you have to go to the board and ask for an exception. So I really struggle with it, and I think it's I think a lot of locals are watching it too, and they're going, what is this? What are these solutions we're coming up with? I think that what I've learned about deed restrictions in the last 2 years has been a lot. I think there's really great deed restrictions out there. And I really like the deed restrictions that are on the project that we're working with. There isn't an income restriction. But it is designed to keep the home in locals' hands. They have to be owner occupied, they can't be rented. I think those are really the key things. I think the project that we're working on now is really successful. I think there's been a lot of interest, and I want to finish these and I want to do more. But I don't know where to go next. So I'm not exactly sure what I'm asking. I know in the town looking at starting an affordable housing fund, maybe there might be some money out there. Maybe there's a project where, you know, the town could buy the land and we could develop a project for it. I don't know what it is. I'm in this really weird place where I'm not a nonprofit, but we're not greedy. We're not greedy developers. And I know there's a handful of people in this town, other contractors, that feel the same way. And I'd love somehow to make a coalition of, you know, there's lead builders, like lead environmental builders. I wish in Ridgway we could do ethical building, where we look at costs, discuss them openly, don't hide the costs. We don't bring in big contractors from Grand Junction and Montrose, because I think they hide a lot of expenses. And I think these projects get really expensive really fast. When I hear Wetterhorn throwing out $4 and $5 million numbers, I'm just like, what is going on? When I talk to the Habitat and they say, oh, this is a $2 million project and we're going to lose money on it, I'm just like, how is that possible? Those homes that's not $2 million. They had in-kind contribution. The land was donated. There's something wrong. So I know we're in a moratorium right now on development, but I know as soon as that moratorium is lifted, there's going to be a lot of stuff hitting you guys. And we need to figure out ways that we can make more lots like this, lots that are deed restricted, but available to local builders so that we can build homes for locals. I think I lost myself a little bit in some of this, but I think making pocket neighborhoods where there's multiple houses, cluster homes, not big projects. Big projects take so long. They take years, almost a decade, some of these projects, but little things we can say, hey, let's put 3 houses here. Let's put 4 houses here. Let's look at 500 square foot duplexes, something really small that people can afford. I had a teacher email me yesterday and say, hey, I hear you're doing these houses. I make $60,000 a year. Is there any way that you think I can afford this? The first house we're looking at is $390,000. There's no way she can afford that. But if it was, 450, 500 square foot duplex that we could maybe build for 250 or 300,000, I think she could. So that's my 2 cents. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Therese.
Yeah.
I guess the only thing I would drop, and others may want to weigh into, is just, I think we all are on the same page when it comes to town council and the kinds of comments you just made. We're all looking for the same thing. We're all looking for ways to think outside the box and find creative ways to fund housing that can be afforded by that missing middle, they call it,
Exactly.
the 120 to 150% of AMI, sometimes close to 200% of AMI. Our
It's unaffordable.
our AMI is really high.
Yeah.
And the thing I keep saying is market rate affordable is a pipe dream. It doesn't exist.
Right.
Period. End of story. So we do need to work together. I love the idea of, this council has been really wrestling with trying to find ways to generate funding to support these kinds of efforts.
Yeah.
I definitely think there's an opening to have some discussions where we get people like you and Cliff and others in the community that are small contract developer types that want to do stuff that's going to be supportive of the community. It's going to be truly affordable. And I just think we need to sit down and talk about it. And like you said, talk about it in real terms.
Yeah.
I mean, the problem that I see that we face the most here at this table is that the town of Ridgway just doesn't have the resources to, like you said a minute ago, buy property and make it available for deed restricted housing. But if we can figure out ways to generate some funding, there's so much funding out there coming from the state and the feds right now. It's almost like, it feels like a tsunami almost.
Right.
But trying to manage it, trying to figure out which piece, which bucket is a lot of work.
Sure.
But I do think, I think we hear you and we're of the same mind if we can figure it out. I was devastated when I learned just how below the bar space to create was for the, we thought it was going to be, we thought it was going to be for deputy marshals and stuff. It's still supplying a huge need. You missed earlier tonight, that guy from Art Space, Andrew, was here and he was talking about how, what did he say? Some 50% of the people living there are actually creative. They're actually artists. I mean, it's just exactly what it was meant to be to a certain extent, in that it's providing homes for people who couldn't live here otherwise.
Right.
Period. We could talk about what are in homes. I mean, it's a model that Fading West modular home model, I think, has a lot of promise. There's obviously some glitches in it, and we got to figure that out. And to me, it's like there's not one answer. There's 500 answers. It's a huge puzzle that there's many different pieces to that puzzle, and if we can find enough of them to put together, we can create.
We can do a lot. Yeah.
I would to two points here actually. And I don't think it's just the sentiment of the council as well. My sense from talking to county commissioners and with people from URA is that we're actually in a good climate collectively in this whole county to actually work on these kind of things. I think we do need to work really hard to set some specific goals. We might not have the resources to outright, make purchases, but we can certainly, nurture the climate to get private stakeholders involved more and more. And I think that onus is on all of us, and including nurturing, your kind of efforts to work close to the bone in a creative way with minimal resources. And I think highlighting some of those things I think that's can be contagious. And I think that would be really important moving forward. And I don't know, this is a personal opinion, and that's why I've been trying to talk with all of you individually, but I really think I know we're not quote unquote in the business of developing, but we are in the business of working with our community to nurture based upon the reasons why we all moved here in the first place. And I think and you and I talked about this a couple of weeks ago, I would love to figure out how to set some specific goals proactively to figure out what kind of units we can develop not just somewhat being reactive and see projects come proposed from the outside, like the Rural Homes Project and the with Wetterhorn and Space to Create, but I really think that would behoove all of us to set some specific goals to work towards. And I think that would also help scuttle some of the discussions where we get nitpicky about where we're going to put that money for affordable housing. So if we had some goals to work towards, then we know at least in a kind of a capital campaign sensibility that you don't do something unless you have the money for it. But if you had people working collectively towards it, it makes it a little easier in the discussion, right? Then the numbers become the bullet points that you go after. So anyway, those are my personal thoughts as well. But I mean, I'm a fan of the kind of stuff that you do, and would love to see more of it. But I also know that's going to be give and take on all the process with zoning, and if there is a 2,400 square foot structure on a hill, why not in a newfangled way consider it as something that could be 4 units, as opposed to a trophy home.
Right. I know that I read in the paper, the mayor, can I just keep talking?
Well, I was gonna say, this is a bit of a tangent off of
Okay.
the item in front of us.
I understand,
We
yeah.
still have quite a bit on our agenda, including executive session. So it's a great discussion. I hate to cut it off, but I think we need to keep moving. And yeah, and I also want to give other people here a chance to weigh in if they want. I mean, your points are really well taken, and we're listening. All I can say is that JT said it. I know what you guys do. I appreciate the efforts you're making, and I do think that we are doing what we can to support all the different puzzle pieces. So.
Yeah, and for my part, I'd love to just sit down and pick your brain on some of the pieces you touched on, and not this session where we're kind of constrained by time, and pick your brain on some more of those ideas.
I would love to do that too. I just don't know how to make that happen. So this is kind of my.
That's our job.
Yeah.
To figure out how to.
Yeah, I'd love to be part of that conversation.
Great.
That's basically the point of my soapbox speech. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Did you say there was a hand up? Well, Jake's
Put
looking.
it down.
Did you want to say something, Jake?
Yeah, I was just going to respond. I didn't catch the person's name who was speaking there, but you were talking about a coalition of folks working together to solve these problems, and that exists in the Home Trust of Erie County. I'm on the board of that. I'm also a county commissioner, and we are shopping for contractors right now for the Parkside Duplex project. So I'd love to connect with you and talk about that, to build some of your ideas into some projects that are already underway.
Well, Therese, you know how to get a hold of Jake?
Jake, I'm Therese Seal. We've talked before.
Did you hear that?
No, I didn't really hear that.
It's Therese Seal. And
Okay.
she and her husband are local contractors, and I can put you in touch with them, or they can get your email off the county website, but definitely we'll link you up.
I'll get in touch.
Okay. All right, anyone else want to weigh in, or is there a motion to approve this resolution 23-05?
I move to approve resolution number 23-05, expressing opposition to statewide land use and zoning preemptions in Senate Bill 23-213.
Second.
Motion made by Russ, seconded by Terry. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Passes unanimously. That takes us to item number 17, resolution number 2306, supporting updates to the Colorado Communities for Climate Action Policy Statement. I know Preston's going to lead this off, but I know Beth will give you an opportunity to weigh in as the CC4CA rep.
No, Preston nailed it in the memo. Just need to kind of know where we stand, so we can go into that discussion like going forward.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions, comments?
I will say in short, because as CC4CA has expanded and some of the who joined us are maybe purple-ish when it comes to climate. I find that most positions that have ever been suggested for CC for CA are generally things that this council would support on a one-by-one basis. You know, I listen to some of the concerns people have and they say, oh, we could never bring that up to our council. And I'm like, oh, that would maybe have an interesting discussion, but it's not going to be shocking or new.
Well said. From your experience, what is their form of advocacy? How do are they paid lobbyists?
Essentially, there is a couple of paid folks who spend time at the state actually advocating for changing policies such that it empowers and supports our communities to actually go after effective climate action.
Yeah, at least two that I know of, Joe May from San Miguel County, Oklahoma County Commissioner of Affairs. I think she's employed by them. If not, she's a very active volunteer. And then I forget the name of the former mayor of Anita, right. They've reached out to me numerous times to testify at state legislative hearings on issues that are important to them, and so they do lobbying. They get people like me to testify in support of those that they're supporting. I think they do good work.
Yeah, I've gone to the conference every year in Vail. It's just really impressive to hear about everyone's different efforts and what they're doing, and you know, there's a lot to be learned, but there's definitely power in the collective action. Those lobbyists that we send to the state, they come back every year and say there is a lot of power to saying we represent more than 20, it's over 28, something like that now, 28 municipalities and counties, and there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, I was looking at the list here. There's a list in the footer of their document. It's pretty impressive.
And we were on the list when it was much smaller.
Yep.
As well as Ray County. It's still Juniper's.
Exactly. He came to Ridgway 6-8 months ago and met with Preston and I and looked really cool guy.
42
members, yeah. Impressive.
I want to say we tried to like 20, 22.
Oh, geez.
Not quite, but we're up there.
All right. Any other questions, comments? You know what we need.
Move to approve resolution number 23-06, supporting an updates to the Colorado Communities for Climate Action Policy Statement.
Seconded.
Motion made by Russ, seconded by Polly. All in favor?
Wait, I actually have a question about this. Sorry.
Further discussion, go ahead.
Sorry. You did note that if there's any changes that need to be made, board members will have until the meeting resumes the next day to secure any final additional approvals they need. So is there anything in our resolution that allows for like a conditional approval? Like, do you know what I mean, Preston, versus me needing to come back?
I think the
We're
direction.
okay.
No, that's good. Great thought. I think that direction would be fine.
Okay. Thank you, did.
I just noticed that funny typo on page 2 of the attachment. The short sentence after policy positions says Colorado Communities for Climate Action supports policies that, and then the rest is crossed out.
Yeah, because the policies.
So it's intended to have a colon there that
Yeah.
leads into the legend.
The colon is there, I think. The
Oh,
colon's
yeah,
not
you're
red
right.
line.
Very, very good point. It is there. I just didn't see it. So never mind.
I also had that question yesterday and forgot to remember that you had that question.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor and a second, and all in favor? Opposed? Unanimous vote. Takes us to item number 18, ratification of letters related to Uriah County multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation planning effort. It's got Preston's name on it as well.
Sir, these we need council to ratify the subject letters and to our very own Mr. Glenn Boyd, and also the State Hazard Mitigation Officer with the Colorado Division of Homeland Security and Emergency Management. The first letter simply commits the town to the Ridgway County multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation planning effort. The second serves as a funding commitment, subject to annual appropriation, of course, to meet the matching fund requirements for the Ridgway County Hazard Mitigation Plan update coming soon.
All right, thanks. Another,
Sorry, Bo just gave a thumbs up. Maybe people.
okay, got your thumbs up, Bo. Another pretty straightforward one. Any comments or questions? Not, is there a motion to approve?
I was gonna say, I move to approve the ratification of letters related to Ridgway County multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation planning effort.
Thank you. Motion made by Beth, seconded by Russ. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Yet another unanimous vote. That takes us to number 19, annual appointment of Mayor Pro Tem and review of council representation on commissions, committees, and boards. Mayor Pro Tem position is reappointed annually, and the way it's worked for the 24 years that I've been on council now, almost. It's been just a question of whether the current Mayor Pro Tem wants to continue or whether someone else has an interest in it. That's fine. We can very willing to continue, and does anybody else want to compete with us for that job? They're all stepping back.
Can I move to approve or not make system Mayor Pro Tem? Or do we have to do more
Yeah,
things?
let's see. I think we can just have the record show that current Mayor Pro Tem Russ Meyer is willing to continue in that position. I don't think we need to ratify that, do we, Preston?
I like to play a lawyer on TV sometimes, but I think it would be good for
For a vote.
reflect a vote.
Okay. All right, somebody want to
I move to appoint Russ Meyer as Mayor Pro Tem for the next year. Seconded.
motion made by Beth, seconded by Polly. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? There you go. Now, the rest of it is boards and committees, commissions. We don't have any turnover this year, so theoretically we could just stick with what everybody's been doing. Does anyone want to ask to do something different or have someone replace them on the things they're doing now? I think we've got a pretty good slate of reps on these various committees, commissions, and boards. Is everybody happy with leaving it the way it is? All good? Let's see, what can we appoint Kevin to? All right. He's always.
Yeah, but I feel like he does such a great job. What do we call it? Creative Main Street now?
Creative distribution. He's doing a great job.
And that's a
It's a,
heavy time commitment.
yeah.
Yeah.
heavy.
A couple times per month.
Yeah.
At least. Yeah.
So. Good job, Kevin.
And actually, we should change that heading on that for the agenda every month. It's not the creative advocacy team anymore.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah.
You know, it's so funny that since the beginning, even when we were just originally creative district, it was always like, what's that? What's a creative district? And then it was the CAT, the creative advocacy team, and now it's Fuse. And the question always comes up when somebody says that this is Fuse we're dealing with, or I'm on the Fuse committee. What's Fuse stand for? It doesn't stand for anything. It's not an acronym. It's a Fuse, but fusion of the Main Street program and the creative district program. And people are still up scratching their heads. So what?
So did you make a motion that we call it Team Grambly?
In his absence. I don't know if Tara would, and the rest of the Fuse committee would be up for that, but it would be funny. I'm just sort of FYI. I mean, we used to struggle with trying to come up with like sort of an elevator speech about what the creative district is. But, you know, I think that you look at what it has done for Ridgway in terms of establishing our identity as an arts community and space to create and everything else. I think it's pretty clear the benefit it's given the community, but branding is always an interesting challenge. Anyway, you make that change for me, Rusty, for us. All right, so I'm hearing that everyone is fine staying with their representation as is. Do you want a motion to ratify that?
It couldn't hurt a motion to keep it as is.
I move to. Go ahead.
Russ said so moved.
That's
Somebody wants something?
That is cool.
Bo gave a thumbs up.
Who's the second?
Me.
Okay, Russ makes the motion, Polly seconds, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously again.
Before we move on to the town manager's report, can I just quickly draw attention to the fact that almost 2 hours ago now, 2 of our very own got married, and I just want to say congratulations to Jess and Stephen.
To Jess and Stephen.
Yeah.
Here, here.
Cheers.
Aloha.
And
I was here at 6.
I actually texted them at 6 together, and I've gotten some nice text back saying
I
thank you.
did too.
All right. So they're feeling the love, but
It's technically 6.
they've been together a long time, and in fact, Jess's last comment was, can't believe we finally did it.
She said, very happy we finally did it.
So huge congratulations to Jess Nunn and Stephen Schroeder, two very valuable Ridgway staff members who are now married.
Do we need to make a motion?
Yeah, no, they already did.
We don't get to say it that. That's not how that works.
They already did it. Thank you for saying that, Paula.
Thank you for that.
And let the record show we recognize them, please. So town manager's report in the packet. Yeah.
Yeah, don't get used to it. Don't get used to that. But yeah, that was great. Thank you. I was gonna mention that. And actually, we filmed a music video today
Stop it.
to send to them. Karen was in it. I filmed it. And
Of course you did. I'd never be in it.
no, it's not public record. If anyone wants to see it, it's on Deb's phone. So it's a doozy for sure.
That's so sweet. I'm glad. Yeah.
And just love it. I heard just love it.
What do you want to highlight here for us?
Yeah, I'm gonna highlight actually quite a bit. Less than 5 minutes. So Ridgway Space to Create, grand opening celebration. We've already talked about this. The date is June 22nd. That's a Thursday. If it's helpful, I can send out a little hold on your calendars or something. But last manager's report, it said June 8th, I think it was. That is not true anymore. It's June 22nd, Thursday. Flood preparedness. I just want to kind of augment what was in there. Glenn Boyd posted a really informative flood preparedness session earlier today, where we heard from folks at the USGS, Ridgway State Park and Tri-County Water. The most interesting part was the 2023 hydrologic outlook presented by Aaron Walter with the National Weather Service. They had like a modeled snow at in Uncompahgre near Ridgway, modeled snow, Dallas Creek near Ridgway, modeled snow at Cow Creek near the reservoir. There was some other modeling too. What I heard, what I took away from that was that we're Uray County specifically in a much better position than some of the lower elevations. It's kind of common sense, if you will, but yeah, there's some spots in Montrose County and Delta County that might be in a world of hurt if they don't prepare accordingly. But I think they're making some good strides to prepare, given the high snowpack and the runoff expected. So it was a really great meeting, and then we went through all the emergency support functions and heard from everybody in terms of equipment and resource challenges, needs, things to think about. Again, we went through all those functions. we'll be working with the city, the town, and county will be working pretty closely together on messaging or resources and such as we get closer to the water's getting a little bit higher. So it was a really great meeting. I know there have been some concerns expressed from some members of the public, maybe a lot more out there about what everyone's doing to prepare. Because we haven't had a year like this in a few years. So it's an interesting / good problem to have, right? But we need to make sure we're ready when the right time comes. So just wanted to mention all that. Happy to answer any questions if anybody has any, but we'll continue to do our best to prepare. Val Swart would be so upset if we didn't highlight again, but it's International Dark Sky Week. And it's such a great, or it's not yet. It's next week, starting the 15th. National Dark Sky Week. So I found that some of the messaging from IDA, they're really trying to promote people to get outside, enjoy, discover the night, enjoy the night sky. Couple that with the really important messaging of lowering the amount of light pollution out there. So it's a really good message. Annual cleanup day is not this Saturday. The next Saturday, you'll see Mayor Clark out there with the by the dumpsters, helping people unload their trucks. You'll see Rodney Paulson, see Bobby Barnes, you'll see myself doing the same thing, at least for a portion of the morning. So it's usually pretty well received. And we also have a dumpster from Reclametal coming this year. So
tell your friends that they got any fencing or metal of any kind. We get asked about that every year. And this year we finally got, and we bring a dumpster just for that.
Cool. Is that going to Rec Club?
Yeah. And I'm a little sorry that we Ashley Perkins at Braddock reached out asking when we were doing our annual cleanup and asking if we could do it on the 22nd this year because it is Earth Day. And they have you probably have seen posters. They've actually been advertising a broader town cleanup meeting. I think at Cottonwood Park at where it comes down to Lena Street. The Lena Street end of Cottonwood Park is what I'm trying to say. Meet there like 8, I think. It's on the poster that's over in town, and they're going to clean up Cottonwood. They're clean up the parks, the athletic fields. Ask people to come out and try to bring them some freshness, I think, and then they'll bring everything over to the dumpsters. So I wish we would have kind of coordinated our PR campaign with that a little bit, but I think it is as long as we're doing it the same day and so it's all the same. Going in the same place and towards the same effort. So tell your friends. Yeah, good.
Getting close to time to set another Adopt a Highway cleanup. Don't have to pick a time tonight. Maybe we can send a doodle poll out and figure out what weekend day works best for everybody.
So I'm camping this weekend. Let's not do it.
Have you even done one yet?
No, going camping each time you did.
We got
Well, I'll be camping this time, I'm sure. Okay.
We got to find a weekend where we get to.
You don't do it.
Yeah.
Let's get a nice little long sled. A couple more things. Water replacement program. Just want to say that we're starting to receive new water meters and MXUs again, which is great. It's a big deal. We did 150, I think a little over 150 in 2021. Slated to do, I think, over 200 this year, and so in an effort to catch up. So Randy and company, they're going to be they're going to have a lot to do here next couple months. So we are working with Colorado Main Street again to utilize their technical assistance report to hopefully be able to hire a contractor to develop the construction level document for remaining improvements at Heritage Park, namely the visitor center and those bathrooms. And so, yeah, looking forward to that. They're in the process of drafting an RFP to go out here soon, hopefully, and then get that going in the state's next fiscal year, which would start on July 1. Right? So, and then last thing I'll say is shout out to the Public Works crew for all their work getting the culvert in at the intersection of Cora and Frederick. It's looking a lot better than it did last week, but and obviously there's still a lot more work to be done with the Wetterhorn project, but that was part of our in-kind contribution to the build out of Frederick Street.
Right? Glad to see you're reached out for youth advisory council candidates this spring. And get ahead of the game on that one. I'll have to reach out to the school, Beth, and see if we've got any applicants for a scholarship, by the way.
Yeah.
Coming up. What else?
Lavender Valley next month.
Lavender Valley and concert series.
Pam's not even here for me to shout out. She said breweries didn't seem excited, and then there was 18 of them were on the list, and I was like, okay, Pam.
Well,
I wish I could give her kudos for it.
Burns had to file order.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
That's gonna be fun.
Don't be giving her kudos for the joke.
I loved it. It was so dumb.
That's all.
What'd you think, Bo?
I actually may have to share that. So Ridgway School has gone back to doing weekly announcements, and the middle school leadership team has actually been reading them lately, and they will giggle to their toes. And the whole high school like waits to hear the middle schoolers read this joke every week. It's really cute. It's the only part of the announcements they care about. Wait.
What's the joke?
That's the joke. It's
Okay.
so sad.
Enjoyed the trades at dinner last night. Thank you all for coming. What else?
Special meeting next Monday.
Right.
Next coming Monday. Thank you all for being willing to do that.
So I'm gonna try to attend remotely because I'll be camping. The internet kind of janky, bluff. So
If you're in town, they actually have good internet. They have fiber in town.
in town, my campsite is in town, but it's sketchy.
Yeah. Do it if you can. Yeah, I'm excited about Proposition 1, 2, 3. That has some great potential. All right. Any other questions or anything for Preston? We have does anyone else have reports from any of their committee assignments or anything?
I could do a quick one, even though I haven't been here, although I've been chiming in remotely. Sustainability Advisory Board is currently working on website. Dave Jones and Kenny are really working hard on it. And the details on that are going to be fleshed out in our next meeting coming up here on the 18th. One thing I was going to bring up, and it's not specifically Sustainability Advisory Board, but I just had a conversation finally with Fred at Hazen today. Is that right? About I don't know if you guys are aware, but
His wife's name's Hazen. Fred. Yeah, I know.
Fred.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fred, I don't know if you guys know, but there was total mortality of all of the local hives. Oil, both at the apiary and with privately owned. And they've been reluctant to ask until they get full or come up with the money to even do a full forensic look. They are worried, and we're very, very clear in the conversation that the inference right now is that there may have been some spraying going on correlated with the timing of the deaths in the fall. Out at the far end of the soccer field. And then also at the apiary, some other ones from some professional beekeepers were also total mortality as well. So right now it's just inference and trying to gather the evidence to figure out what's going on. He's trying to come up with the right place to send some of the bees that he's kept since last fall to have forensics done on it. But there's definitely an active investigation going on right now to figure out if something may have been other than certainly not cold or regular natural causes, but some of the timing seems to correlate that there may have been some spraying right at the time of this kind of overnight death. And it wasn't just 10 or 40%, it was 100%.
As far as I know, Colorado Coral Honey was not impacted. They're still, they're expressing honey.
Okay, well, they didn't come up in the conversation, but there's been a lot of discussion and there were mortalities elsewhere as well, but it happened here on the edges of town. I mean, trying to sample from different places right now to figure out what was going on.
Yeah, we should.
But it just know that they've actually been holding off on really discussing it with us because they don't want it to be like they're pointing fingers, or they want it to be a cooperative what if and how did it happen.
Appreciate that. Thanks for the heads up. Sorry to hear that. Be very interested to hear.
So yeah, I'm gonna do some more fact finding as well with Fred and got a couple calls in today, but we're trying to figure that out. And they also don't, he's trying to figure out what the cost will be, even if it has to go to Colorado State University Extension Office up in Grand Junction, deals with all the insects and invasives, et cetera, to do the forensics on it. And hopefully it's not glyphosate, which would be which is, the core of Roundup. So anyway, just something on the radar and know that there's chatter and discussion going on about that outside of the sphere, and they've been reluctant to approach until they have more information.
Like I said, thanks for letting us know. Sorry to hear it. Hopefully we'll get to the bottom of it. Anyone else have anything they want to report on? So that brings us to an executive session, I believe.
Do you want me to read the citation, Mayor?
Yes.
If we could get an executive session pursuant to 24-6-4024B for the purpose of receiving legal advice with respect to a specific legal question regarding the possible purchase and or condemnation of 539 Marion Overlook, Ridgway, Colorado.
So we make the motion, so move to go into executive session. Second. So I'll say second by, or motion by Polly, second by Russ. And
Maybe one person, but I would not be part of.
that's her turn.
Oh, sorry, Karen. I know what's happening.
I'm trying to get out of here.
I'm gonna wait till JT gets our.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that was.
Party on, everybody.
Have a good evening. Thank you for your help tonight.
No problem.
All right, now that JT's back, we have a motion on the floor to go into executive session. All in favor? Opposed? Passes unanimously, so. We are ready to do that, Bo?
Great. And this is an executive session pursuant to 24-6-4024B for the purpose of receiving legal advice regarding a specific legal question regarding the possible purchase and or condemnation of 539 Marion Overlook. Caution, each participant confine the discussion, the stated purpose of confine their discussion to the stated purpose of the executive session. If at any point in the executive session, any person believes we're going outside the proper scope of the executive session, please interrupt the discussion and make an objection. As legal counsel for the town, it's my position that the purpose for the executive session constitutes privileged attorney-client communication. Therefore, I'm recommending no recording be kept of this executive session.
All right. And now that we're out of executive session and back in regular meeting, unless there's any opposition, I will declare it adjourned.
So.
Thanks, everybody. Didn't last as long as I thought it might. Thank you.
No, that is way to keep on moving along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thumbs
Thanks,
up is
guys.
really Great, so I think you should just keep those coming.
Yeah, well.
Very long.